Okay, I have a confession to make. Something I never thought I would say. And I'm wondering if you can relate.
I'm not going to admit to anything.
I'm struggling a lot with mask envy.
You mean like people who have like cooler masks than you, or what?
Yeah, I see somebody and I'm like, wow, that mask is really cool. I need a cooler mask.
We're about to do a thing because we're regathering in some ways now, like very carefully, of course, and we're trying to.
I don't know what a
mask.
gathering is.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Like in your people, you're going to be with real people.
We're going to be real people, but we're going to. It's a Christmas in July kind of thing where we're going to watch a movie because we feel like we can come in, spread everybody out, and but we're doing like a best mask competition kind of thing. That's kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. Here's what I don't get: how do you even wear a mask with that old goatee of yours? Like, what do you have
tricky.
to like bundle it up under there?
It's
like,
tricky.
What is that about?
This morning on my way in, I spilled coffee all over my mask. And so all day my mask has smelled like coffee. It's like, what is this world we're in, man? Like,
oh my gosh. What is this world we're in? It's nuts. Well, it's been a while since everybody's heard from us. I know that. And we apologize. I don't know if we do we apologize? I mean, I think you guys, if you're one of our longtime listeners, I think you can appreciate that this has just been crazy for everybody. And truthfully, I think what Jody and I would say is we wanted to keep doing episodes, but we didn't want every single episode to be an episode about COVID, right?
And that's
But
hard.
we also didn't feel like we could just do some random episode and ignore the fact that everybody's going through COVID. So we've been delayed, We've been just waiting to kind of, and personally also, we both have been going through stuff. Yeah. I mean, just like everybody that's listening. I mean, it's a real challenge, So, but we're glad to be back, and we've definitely got something that we've both been kind of wrestling with. I think that should be a pretty good topic to talk about. So, remember the good old days when we had sponsors? By the way, they're probably like, we ain't paying y'all. Y'all ain't been talking about us. So, so everybody that's listening, you need to go buy something from our sponsors and remind them that we're still here.
And that they love us.
And they love you up. So YM360, man, they've been through a hard summer with Generate Camp, having to cancel everything like everybody else. So, but they're still there, and they're putting out some great resources. Man, they were doing that.
That church at home.
Church at home, Wednesday Night Live stuff. They really are leaning in hard to help equip youth pastors. So. Just take a minute, go on and check out ym360.com and see what they're doing. And then our game. Have you played it any? I mean, when could you have played it? Yeah.
Well, not. We've played it some, like in the office.
Yeah.
But aerosport.fun.
Aerosport. And it's a rocket on a stand and a frisbee. And you knock the rocket off. And if you think that doesn't sound that fun, you ought to try it because it's amazing. We both have one. We both bought one before they became sponsors, not even knowing they were going to become sponsors. Yeah. Like we both liked it so much.
And we used it a ton until we were quarantined.
COVID. So yeah, it's good. But reach out to those guys, and
most definitely,
that should be fun. So
yeah, we appreciate those guys a ton just for helping us keep the show alive.
Yep.
So I think, like you said, this is a conversation that you and I have had some. I've had this conversation, I know, with quite a few student pastors, youth pastors over the last month, especially. Something that I kind of keep coming back to, and so I think it'll be helpful as we kind of walk through.
Has it ever been more important, Jody, by the way, to have a good friend in youth ministry?
Man, I'm telling you. You know what I'm saying?
Like, and I know some folks are probably listening thinking, man, I probably need that, but man, networking and having some folks that you could reach out to. I know my buddy Chip Paul over here locally, he and I are good friends. Like, we've reached out a bunch. And then I think you and I have talked each other out of quitting probably 3 or 4 times each, and
a week.
Yeah. So, it's, it's just an important time. And I would just say this, hang in there. We're going to talk about this a little bit, but, one quick thing I would just say about that friendship thing would be pay attention to that feeling if you feel completely alone. And when this thing settles down a little bit, work hard towards finding some folks like that, like in your life. So
definitely,
it's important.
So we started talking about an episode, what another episode would be, and our hope again is that this would be encouraging, not us wallowing in self-pity and shame or throwing rocks, or it would feel like that, because that's certainly not our heart. But I'm in California. Chris is way over in Georgia, in the Atlanta area, and California is. And I know, too, let me say this. We have a lot of listeners who are outside of the U.S., and so
sure,
I don't
totally
even understand where to even start with the context that you're ministering in right now. I don't even have a framework for that. So if anything feels like we're way off base, it's totally out of ignorance. I just don't know. It's like two different worlds, where I am in California and where you are in Georgia right now with the COVID stuff.
Hey, you want to know something cool I did the other day?
Yeah.
Like maybe a couple weeks ago. I think it was a couple weeks ago.
Sure.
I did you made me think about it when you think about international listeners. I jumped on a Zoom call with some of my Peruvian friends, and I did a Bible study. Like, so I had a translator there on one of our trips that's also a youth pastor. He said, will you come on and speak to my teenagers? And so I went on and did it. It was awesome. Like, it was the coolest thing ever. I'm sitting on a Zoom call with all these Peru kids. It was really cool.
Look at you.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Well, I think so. It's an ever-changing landscape, and I think for me, it's been easy, and I have found myself, admittedly, really discouraged a lot over the last few months, just for a number of reasons. And I'm in a great context, so that's not at my aims. I'm not even at my church here. I love where I serve. But just the ever-changing landscape. How many times have we made plans that as soon as they were made, we had to go back to the drawing board and reinvent again? And I'm looking around. I was thinking about this even today, knowing that we were going to be recording, and man, I'm watching student pastors and hearing from student pastors that are like in the last 4 months, right? They've spun up online teaching of some kind for their student ministry. Many of them are juggling the live stream and handling that for their whole church because they're the unofficial tech person, right?
Yeah, right.
They're now running social media stuff like never before. They figured out how to do Zoom calls and Zoom groups to meet the needs there. They've had to reinvent camp if they've had to do that. They're juggling it's crazy the amount of things that I've watched student pastors do. It makes me super proud to be a student pastor and really proud to look around and see what other student pastors are doing. But the consistent and constant reinventing has become a grueling task. And so a couple days ago...
to be fair, Jody, and I think you're right, and that's definitely the positive side of that thing, but what we also know is that there's a lot of struggling going on as well. I was having this conversation with my pastor yesterday. I had been off Facebook for a while. I just kind of needed a break, and I was off Facebook and social media for a while, and I bounced onto one of the youth pastor forums, the one with like a billion people in it, and there were like several folks that have been let go.
Yeah.
And it made me realize, man, like there are youth pastors, churches that their budgets are starting to struggle, and the first person to get the axe, is the youth pastor. And then you just see other stories of people that are, for whatever reason, they've tried to reinvent, but just nothing's working, for them, and they're super discouraged. I think you and I, would it be fair to say, I think you and I both of our experience has been discouragement, because I've been discouraged as well and had frustrating moments, but there's been some up. We've been blessed to have some ups as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right. So we're experiencing ups and downs. Yeah. But the downs are a real pain. Matter of fact, in preparation for this, I wrote down this sentence. I said, I believe that what we're going through is perhaps the most revealing and clarifying thing that we've been a part of in ministry ever.
Yeah, totally.
Now, other examples of clarifying and revealing moments would be 9/11. For me, I mean, if you were in ministry back then, but I was a student pastor then.
Y2K.
The recession. What's that?
Y2K.
That wasn't. Whatever. What's funny was I actually remember that everybody was so dang worked up.
Freaked out, man.
I mean, just...
I remember we
had,
stocked up things just in case. And
Yeah. So,
did you do a lock-in that night?
I'm trying to remember what we did. It was...
I know a lot of youth groups were like, we're going to do a lock-in of Y2K.
I feel like we were at an overnight thing at Main Event is what I think I did. But then also, which is funny though, you joke about that, but I had to have conversations with parents about whether or not it was going to be safe for their kids to be out on Y2K night. That's the truth. That is the truth. Okay.
Oh my God.
All right. What I was going to say is though, 9/11, big clarifying, lots of, but not like this. But definitely a deal.
Yeah.
The recession of 2007.
Yep, that was a big one.
Student ministry budgets, man, cut back. Were you serving? You were serving then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you remember? Your budget just went.
Yeah.
And I don't know about y'all, but we had so many parents laid off in our church, and stuff. And so that was a pretty hard one as well. So,
this one is interesting because it's not, at least we're starting to feel, I think, the financial weight of this.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the full wave is still coming of that. At least
Are
here.
you implying that all of the money bailout type things that sometime later on in life we're going to have to pay all that stuff back at some point?
Never.
I don't know anything about this kind of stuff, but I mean,
I don't know.
I really don't. But I'm just like,
I just think
surely we're going to have to pay for that sometime.
I think at some point, as like we're heading into right now, we're heading into the school year here soon. A lot of school districts are going online. What does it mean for parents who work? Like, I think
Georgia announced today, man, all online. Well, not Georgia. Scratch that. That's a bad announcement.
County, right?
That's an overstatement. Where I'm at, Cobb County announced that we're doing online only. So,
yeah, and it's here. I was asking in our Facebook group today, just curious to see what everybody was doing and what that looks like. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But I think, I've had that you and I have had that conversation. Obviously, I've had it with several folks here on staff. It's like you realize what works and what doesn't and what you've built your house on. And if you've built your house around entertainment and event-driven ministry, then right now, we're struggling if that's
and that's the clarifying and revealing part I'm talking about. And I've said that about, you see that in your small groups, your volunteers. It's across the board. It's very clarifying and revealing what works and what doesn't work. Those that are strong, those that are not strong. So it's it's a deal for sure.
And the hard part is sometimes that culture is not you, right? Like, to be fair, sometimes that's the culture your church has had, or the expectation that your church has of you.
Well, sure.
And so you may not necessarily buy into that, but you're having to live in that world, and trying to do that now is just super, super hard.
Yeah, it's tough.
Anyway, a couple of days ago, California, where I'm at, we had been, kind of able to meet in person again, and so we geared up, and for us, it took us, a while to get those systems in place. We met as a weekend gatherings in person, and it was awesome to see folks. And then a couple of days ago, California closed it back down, right? Mm-hmm. And whatever. Listen, I don't see this as persecution. That's not the place or discussion for this. I'm not, everybody's got an opinion of whether they can tell us to meet or not. Doesn't matter. The reality is we're not meeting. We're not allowed to meet. And for whatever reason, even though it didn't really affect our student ministry a ton, man, it was just super discouraging. I just found myself really, really discouraged. And so I keep coming back to this thing. And so I actually, again, I went to our podcast group and just felt like maybe others were struggling with the same. And so I said, I've been reminded of this truth recently that has proved incredibly helpful over the past couple weeks. When God called you to minister to students in the local church, he had this season in mind as well as the past one. Just as he equipped you to serve in the past, he has equipped you to serve in the present moment. And I think I have to keep reminding myself of that a lot. And so we're kind of going to have this conversation around calling versus career-ish kind of thing, because what's fascinating is youth ministry, for sure when you started in youth ministry, but even when I started in the youth ministry, there were a lot of folks, like, I don't know that many would have said youth ministry was a viable career, so to speak. Like it was largely a stepping stone into other positions or other places for a long time. You had folks who loved student ministry, but it was really hard to serve there and stay there. But it has become that. Like it has become, you could definitely make a career now.
Yeah, there are definitely more and more and more older youth pastors now. Like I don't feel like, as I'm about to turn 50. I mean, I know, right?
I don't know if there's that old. That's pretty.
There is too. I mean, there's bunches. Yeah, there's a whole lot more because it can be. Yeah. So sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So no, you're good. So I just think sometimes it's easy for me to lose sight and forget about the power of the calling into what I do. And that sounds heretical, but when I'm finding myself discouraged, I'm honestly, I have no other skill set in life except for youth ministry. So I would struggle hard to do anything productive that could feed my family, especially in COVID, because like I'm really good at dodgeball, but only against junior high kids. That's not helpful.
Yep.
So I think I just think more than ever, remembering and being certain in your calling is more important than probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right for sure. A book that I was reading through this process, talked a lot about Moses, and I mean, without the burning bush and the other moments that he had with God, I think some of those other really, really difficult things he went through, I mean, the years in the wilderness, if you will, trying to lead those people, I think I can only imagine that he had to look back on, God has tasked me, with this. God has called me to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've never even thought about it. Maybe it would be easy to look at that and say, and maybe I'm over thinking this, but easy to look at that and say, man, okay, God called me to deliver them from Egypt and take them into the promised land. But I didn't know anything about wandering through the desert for 40 years and leading a rebellious people. Like that would be a discouraging moment. Like I would say the equivalent would be, well, God called me to run towards students and to do student ministry, but
yeah. I think
one thing I learned in quarantine.
Yeah, one thing I learned in that though was, the end of that story is God tells Moses that he can't go into the promised land. Yeah. And I never really thought about the way this book talked about it was, it said that Moses seemed to not be bothered by it, though, because he never was doing it all for his glory anyway, but he was doing it for God's. So if that was the best way to honor God, that was fine. And I think if anything, you talk about clarifying and revealing, I think some of the dark days I've gone through in this process have been moments where I've had to remember that my walk with Jesus is what and I'm doing this because of what, and I'm not doing it for the numbers of kids, the feeling of a successful youth event. but I'm doing it because I feel like God has called me to honor him and glorify him by pointing teenagers to Jesus.
Yeah, no doubt. That's good.
But, but that doesn't mean it hasn't been hard. And just to be clear, man, if you're sitting in your car right now or sitting in your office right now and you're struggling and you're like, man, I'm feeling this. You and I talked about this earlier today, Jody, as we were thinking about this episode. We said, struggling right now doesn't mean we're not saying that if you're struggling, it means you're not called.
Right. Yeah. No. Of course not.
I mean, we're definitely not trying to say that. But I do think a reminder though today to just say, to remember your first love, which was not teenagers. Hopefully, which was not getting a billion T-shirts, was not planning a fun event or playing dodgeball or having kids think you're cool. Like, hopefully your first love was Jesus, and the idea of serving him got inside of you in a way where you were like, and I just want to point teenagers to that, and then that ended up in a calling for you, of doing, youth ministry, and you can lean on that.
Yeah, and I think it would be helpful. This is where I found myself often, is kind of taking some time to sit down and really think through a lot of what you're just saying. Like, why did I even start this crazy thing? What was it about this? Well, man, ultimately, yeah, it started with a stirring in my own heart, right? That my own love for Christ and overflowed in such a way that there was this compelling urgency to take that to teenagers. And I think the hard part is, if I'm being really honest right now, is I don't see teenagers very often in my context.
You're like, I'm not going to do any of that.
I mean, I live with them, but most in my house.
Yeah, but those don't count. Those are just, you're stuck with them. Yeah.
So. I can't get rid of them. I've tried. But I think so. I mean, just in my current context, most of my student ministry right now is in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And that is not as fun as I would have said that it would be 6 months ago. The
newness
exhausting.
wore off quick, didn't it?
Man, I'm telling you what.
The newness wore off quick, man, of all the cool Instagram and all the cool fun, live videos and the this and the that. And I feel like everything we do, the shelf life of it is about a minute. And it's like, try to do something different, So.
Yeah, and then, so I think all that, even going back to that discouragement this past week, was like, we could, in all honesty, I never wanted to view this as a season to endure. I really wanted to be, and I've challenged our team to see this as an opportunity to grow and to deepen and to come out stronger than we went in.
Yeah.
But still, you're like, man, there was like an end in sight. It felt like, we're opening up finally. It looks like, and then for that to turn really quickly, all of a sudden, and now we're looking probably through the end of the year, at least with schools online, like campus ministry is going to be gone. I mean, just having to sit down and re-envision, reimagine.
Yeah.
Again is like, okay, here we go again. And then, just recognizing like, man, our parents are not equipped right now. They do not feel equipped to do this. We have overstepped our bounds for too long in the role of discipling.
Yeah.
And how do we correct that in a pandemic?
Sure.
And so you start, like you're saying, you start seeing all those things have been exposed. But even in the midst of that, seeing God move and seeing God work, pushing through the frustrations that you are experiencing and seeing, and it's just, it's grueling, man. And I'm sitting here, and we're just getting started. It feels like now again.
Yeah, and I think part of this also is, there's in youth ministry, it's easy to get really deep into youth ministry before you're big time tested. And all of a sudden you have a career in youth ministry, and now I think maybe there are a lot of folks that they're experiencing this trial, this challenge for the first time.
Yeah.
I got my hair cut yesterday, and
it looks good.
Thank you. And
it's a nice fade.
I'm trying not to make any jokes about yours too. Okay, so somebody will have to look up pictures of us to understand the joke. I was it was a new girl that was cutting my hair, and I like people. I love hearing people's stories, and I was like, she thought for a while she wanted to be like in medical school. So like the first year she did like an internship thing, but she quickly realized that she didn't like it, and so she ended up doing hair. And it's a pretty good place, all this stuff. And she's just starting out. But why I'm telling that story is, though, like in youth ministry, I think, man, you can start out. What typically is going to draw you in, you're going to get to do some of those fun things. You're going to do all that stuff, and you're not going to face a ton of trials, and you're probably not going to face as many mean parents. Got any mean parent emails in the last 4 months there, Jody?
None. Of course
You've got
not.
any? Wow, that's amazing.
No one has any opinions on what we should be doing.
Really? Like, yeah, that's amazing. Good. So it's those moments, though, that are going to really cause you to go, calling?
Yeah.
Or career,
Yeah.
The thing is, and I'm not knocking a UPS driver. I love my UPS drivers. Anytime I can give them a free drink, I always try, if I can catch them, I'm like, hey, you want a Sprite or whatever, And it's amazing how many of them say yes, too. What's that?
Do you do magic tricks for your UPS
No,
driver?
you can't do magic tricks right now because it's like, hey, take a card. Oh, wait, you don't want to touch anything I'm touching. Jeez. But like if all of a sudden if things get rough, you're not so deep in you can't decide to go a different route at that point, And and to think about, there's something, there's a spiritual aspect to being in youth ministry where you feel called to do that. Most likely, if you're listening, you didn't just jump into youth ministry because it was like you're looking around and going, well, I could be a youth pastor, I could work at Walmart, I could do this, I could do that, whatever. You picked it intentionally, and all of a sudden now it's hard. So it's important to go back to that first love and make sure. And this is the part where I hope you've listened to the entirety of what we're saying here. We're not saying that if you're struggling that you're not called. But there is a chance, realistically, that there's some folks, maybe someone that's listening that, and I'm not talking about because you're tired or you're worn out or you're discouraged, but maybe you have all of a sudden realized this is not my thing, and maybe it is a signal for you to,
which would be really ironic to be listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry
the
podcast.
Longer Haul Youth Ministry podcast, and realize, telling you, get out.
Yeah, you don't want to do this anymore.
No, I mean, I just,
I agree.
I mean, if God's using this to say to you that he has a different route for you, and it's still ministry, maybe a different form of youth, I don't know. But I would say if it's just a discouragement thing, though, man, hang in there for the love.
Don't give up. I think
I really don't believe this is going to last forever. I do believe it's going to last a long time. I mean, here we are, we're recording this, middle of July, and I think we're in it for a while still. I mean, a good while.
Yeah, for sure.
I think any sense of normalcy will be in 2021, truthfully.
Yeah.
I tried, dude, I was going to make a t-shirt, by the way. I survived 2020. Like, I was like, oh, hey, like, I'm going to go ahead and that's already stolen. Like, somebody's already got that.
Yeah,
I was like, that'd be great, like to have a t-shirt, I survived 2020, and sell the heck out of those things in December. I was like, it's going to be a great shirt at the end of 2020. Yeah, somebody already stole that website, so.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I saw a thing the other day that a squirrel tested for the bubonic plague. Of course.
2020.
Of course. Yeah. Can we just skip it? Well, here's the crazy part. And I was having a conversation with another youth pastor last week about this. So I've been a student pastor for 20 years. You've been a student pastor for like 50.
Shut up.
50. For a while. Okay. And here I sit in the middle of a pandemic, and it's not that, how do I say this so this makes sense? It's not that my experience of being a youth pastor is wasted or is of no help. It is, but I don't know how to do ministry in a pandemic, right? Like it's a whole new world. Now I know how to deal with parents, and I know how to manage budgets, and I know how to all the practical type of things. But we're stepping into a season now where, we're just kind of all figuring it out as we go. Things that worked this time last year are not going to work this year.
Yeah, I mean, none of us know what the heck we're doing. You know, that's definitely true.
And I feel, like I don't know what your current context is like with your students, but I know for us, so many of our students that we're hearing from are super hardcore struggling with anxiety and depression, and it's increasing the longer we're home, and now with online school, like that weighs heavy on me. And students, families that are in abusive situations, you're just in it. And so those things, as a student pastor, you're like, oh man, normally we would be able to kind of lean in and step into some of that a little bit. And in this season, it's like,
it's harder for sure.
It's harder.
But I do believe that God has equipped all of us. And like you said earlier, it's not caught him off guard. It's not. This is not caught God off guard. And that he's preparing us all for something, and that we're going to, that we are equipped to handle it, different ways. And different youth pastors are going to handle it, Yeah. And I think you're going to have to, everybody, and I would just encourage everybody, please listen. Lean in and listen to this right now. Turn the volume up for a second, because I think this is huge. As we start to come out of this, or as certain youth ministries start to come out of this, man, oh man, it's going to be important that you are careful not to go on Facebook and watch every other successful youth ministry if you happen to be in a context where things have not picked up yet, and allow yourself to feel like a total failure because your group is slower to to jump back in, or even to currently go on and go, man, this guy's got this girl's got people coming to their thing, and I can't get anybody to come. Like, just don't do that to yourself.
That's I'll be honest, that's been really hard for me, because California is obviously slower to open than even where you're at. And so I'm finding myself having to be careful, like seeing other places open up and like, man, they're having like in-person stuff. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I wish we could do that, And so I think
Jody, you wouldn't pick up a hair magazine, right? Like, you wouldn't pick up a hair magazine and look at other hairstyles and go, hey, I want that hairstyle, knowing that you can't even have a hairstyle, right?
I should grow my hair out.
That's a competition that we need to have. We need to see what's left. Like for reals. Like when they...
Gosh. I'll say this too, because I feel like as I'm sitting here listening to myself, like I'm Negative Nancy, just moping all over the place. Like it's more like a counseling session with you.
Yeah, I'm hoping we have something redemptive at the end of this. But if you're 30 minutes into this point, you're going, man, you guys are losing me. Yeah, you better bring something positive.
Okay. We're all quitting. I only quit a few times a week now. I'm good.
Yeah.
I do think, like you were saying earlier, this season has been very exposing. And what comes with that is incredible opportunity.
Yeah.
Because you've got, we've 4 months in, and you're probably right. It's at least to the end of 2020 to some extent. What an opportunity to re-envision, reimagine, and relaunch your ministry.
We changed our logo perfect timing.
There you
Heck
go.
yeah.
I mean, no one's questioning those things right now.
Yep.
So what would have taken you years to come about it, to change, you can do now.
Yep.
And I know, like for us, I've pushed us to think as we're creating new things or whatever, like it needs to be sustainable. I don't want to spend something up for a few months. It's not going to sustain it. And so, yeah, okay, we're doing small groups with Zoom. Great. That's easy enough to transition it in person. But if we're spinning up a bunch of online content, like let's do something that we can sustain beyond this. Maybe we don't do it as frequently, but it's still sustainable. But it's given us so many opportunities to think and dream and to reimagine. And as we're seeing these holes, we're able to kind of step in and think, oh, how could we engage better with parents? Or how could we equip our volunteers better to do this?
Yeah, for real. And just be encouraged, folks. And, I do believe that, odds are that if you're taking the time to listen to the youth ministry, the Longer Haul Youth Ministry podcast, odds are you are called, that there's something inside of you, and I would just encourage you, in the midst of all this to take the time and just, if you're away from the Lord right now, if you're not spending time in the Word like you should, man, get back in there, and turn back to that and turn back to your walk and hit reset. I mean, that's what Jesus did for us on the cross. I mean, he wants us to hit, to come back. And so be encouraged and trust that God's got a plan wherever you are and whatever you're going through, and you don't have to be perfect, and I don't think you have to do it in a way where you don't make mistakes, but hang in there, keep praying, keep looking to the Word, study Moses, man, study the book of Moses, powerful.
Yeah.
Just what he went through. Study some of the other, just look at the disciples, and what they went through and how they had to lean on their calling, though, all during Acts as they were forming a new church and they were facing persecution. Probably was pretty COVID-like back then, for them. So just keep leaning into that, and one kid at a time, just one kid one student at a time. And
well, and I think that is a really important thing to keep in mind too, is that the metrics by which you are measuring success in your ministry right now are going to be different than they were 5-6 months ago.
Good. We're not measuring anything.
Well, and they should be, right? But like, if you're measuring by numbers, I mean, you shouldn't have probably been doing that really to begin with.
Yeah.
But not that numbers don't matter. If they're not they're not. That's not the whole picture.
Yep.
But if that's your measurement, yeah, you're sucking now for sure. And so, but there's never been a time where your students needed you more than now. And you're going to have to run on a full tank, which means, just like you're saying, Chris, like you've got to make sure that your walk is right.
Yep. That
you're in the Word, that you're finding encouragement there.
And read a book, man. Get a good book. Yeah. Read something.
Yeah.
I just started J.D. Greer's Above All. Is it Above All? I think it's called Above All. Man, that was good stuff. So yeah, awesome. Yeah. What else you got? Anything else?
No, I feel like if we were more important, I'd have something super profound to say that we could then take and tweet out, share.
Dude,
out.
I think reminding everybody of the gospel and Jesus is about the most profound thing we can say today.
That's true.
I mean, dude, it's Trust your calling. Trust what God has done in you and wants to do through you. And
better days ahead. Best days ahead.
And listen, as things kind of settle back down, we're going to start interviewing folks again. Hey, if you've listened up to this point and there's something you'd like us to try to cover, we'll try to cover. It's such a challenge right now, though, to kind of come up with a topic like the practical type things that we've done before, because everybody's dealing with the same thing right now. We can't, so we'll get back to that, and we'll bring some folks on that have done some cool things. And anybody know Bob Goff? I'd like to get Bob Goff on here. What do you think? That'd be amazing. Golly, he'd be super encouraging.
We have a whole list of folks.
You know,
a whole list of folks. So
why can't I try?
Just go for it. Come on.
What's he gonna say? He can say no, but he might say yes. We should get Bob Goff on. He'd probably be a real big encouragement to everybody.
Yeah.
You don't think I can do it, do you? Just challenge me right now. I need you to challenge me about it.
Here's what I'll say. And yeah, I'll say this. I don't even know how many episodes we're in. I should probably know that. Over 100, right?
Oh, yeah.
No one has ever said no.
Is that true?
Yeah, no one's ever said no. Some people say no right now.
Yeah. That's the same thing.
No, because most of them have come back around.
That's because you never know. If you say yes, you may end up being a co-host. So that's what...
I mean, do you know how many co-hosts I asked before I got to you?
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
I'm just kidding.
So, yeah. Anyway.
Oh,
all right,
hey,
folks.
Yeah. Thanks for listening today.
They're out there. Wine360.com. They're out there. And Aerosport. I know you don't have any budget left, but... just spend it anyway.
Put it in the yard. Put it in the house.
And it's good folks, and big time. Appreciate them. Also, our intro music I haven't mentioned in a while, man. Bobby Smith, he's such a great guy. Bobcat on Spotify. You need to check. He's got some new stuff coming out. It's really good, dude. He does commercials and stuff. By the way, Jody, I need to send you some of the commercials, like commercials that you've heard
that are him,
and it's him. Like it's his instrumental stuff. Like, he's big time. So he's our worship pastor.
See, worship guys have a skill set that translates.
No, he's got a side hustle that's ridiculous. So, yeah.
We just lose money on a podcast.
Yep.
What do we do? Well, hey, I'm going to plug the Facebook group. I've mentioned it a couple times. We haven't done that in a while.
Come on to the Facebook group.
If you are not already a member of the Super Secret Podcast group,
we'd love to have you.
We'd love to have you do that, as well as just on their mailing list. For the email list, you can sign up for both those at thelongerhaul.com. Well, actually, you have to go to Facebook to get the Facebook group.
Yep.
But
beautiful.
I'll link to it in the show notes as always.
Yep.
Hey, don't be, don't give in to discouragement. Fight it. Stay the course. Lean into calling, and love on Jesus, and let Him love on you. And
good times.
Continue to chase after students. Man, I do feel like this is more of a counseling session, but I'm not paying you.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. We'll see you guys in the next episode.